title of my film, Here's to Flow, was actually inspired by the 2010 film The Lovely Bones, as the meaning of the title is not revealed until the concluding scenes of the film. I like this technique, as the use of enigma codes and foreshadowing keeps the audience hooked to the storyline throughout the duration of the film. It keeps the audience intrigued to find out what the title actually means, which was definitely one of my initial aims, to capture the attention of my audience from the very start. The props in my opening sequence were actually the most crucial part of the overall process, as I used props in order to create my titles. This links very closely to title font and style, as I combine these two categories to create titles which, in my opinion, are quite unique. I was definitely inspired by the first 2 minutes of the film, Napoleon Dynamite, as these titles are created in a very similar way. Everyday rituals and objects are used to present titles, which is a technique that I used also. For example, the makeup being dropped is to represent part of my character's day in, day out routine, however the subtle addition of the title sticks to my aim. Choosing the location of my opening sequence was actually a pretty difficult task, as I needed a location that would also fit with the titles that I needed to create. For example, I needed to write on a brick wall for one of my shots. However, I couldn't use a wall that was visible in an extremely public place, so I had to resort to using the wall outside Megan's very expensive looking townhouse. Not really appropriate for social realism. If I could recomplete the filming process, I would research possible venues in more depth in order to present the stereotypical location of social realism more clearly. The camera work is always something that I try to add a bit of variety to. However, in this case, it was quite hard to apply a wide variety of different shots to my opening sequence, as I had to use a lot of close-ups to allow my audience to actually read the titles. As I couldn't really use a wide variety of shot types, I chose to show each frame from a slightly different angle in order to add the sense of variety that I like to have in my work. For example, there is a shot where one of my characters walks into the kitchen and places a plate in the sink. I show this from a low-down, close-up perspective, as it clearly shows the title, but also looks like the camera is subtly a part of the kitchen setup. Editing my opening sequence was a reasonably straightforward task, as my sequence doesn't contain any effects or special transitions. The only minor things I had to adjust were brightness and contrast of certain shots, and the volume levels of certain clips. The way that I chose to open my film is quite cliché, as it shows 3 girls waking up, getting ready and heading off to school. I switched between each girl, showing them at different stages in the getting ready process, which is a technique that was used in Freaky Friday, starring chick flick star Lindsay Lohan. In Freaky Friday, it shows a mother and daughter getting ready in the same house, however, it shows the contrast in their everyday routine, similar to my 3 characters, as they all lead completely different lifestyles. In my honest opinion, the genre of social realism hasn't been presented very clearly in my opening sequence, but there are definitely aspects that link closely to my chosen genre. I could have represented the genre more clearly using things such as location and costume, but as I stated previously, the location needed to be more suitable for each of my titles. Admittedly, I didn't spend a lot of time focusing on costume, but I didn't want my opening sequence to look overly staged. Social realism is a genre that is extremely realistic, so I didn't want my characters to look ridiculously poor or filthy. I just wanted them to be themselves, but dressed quite plainly. If I could rethink my idea, I would definitely add minor details to make my genre more apparent to my audience. My characters are introduced individually in order to clearly state to the audience who they are and what characteristics they possess. I also introduced each character individually as I wanted enigma codes to be raised about each character. For example, I wanted my audience to ask questions such as, why is she inspecting herself so closely in the mirror? Why does she seem to be covering up a bruise under her eye? And why is she taking a tablet? If I had chosen to bring the characters in at the same time, these enigma codes would not have been raised, therefore my objective would have failed.